So it's time for us to do a kind of a final camera comparison between the iPhone 14s, but this time it's between the iPhone 14, iPhone 10s, iPhone 10R, and iPhone 10. So these are tons of different iPhones that are ranging from different years and different price tags as well. The 14 is kind of that $799 kind of mid-tier upper, priced phone. It's definitely not a cheap phone or budget phone by any means. The 10s was a $1,000 phone from 2018. The 10R was a $749 phone from 2018, and the iPhone 10 was the first $1,000 iPhone that we've ever gotten. So definitely a range of different devices here from different price tags and different eras, which is really interesting. Now, this specific camera comparison, before getting into the details, it was like a snowstorm, so I couldn't really go outside, and all the photos looked way overly bright, so there wasn't really any point of taking those photos outside. But still, for these indoor and somewhat low light condition photos, it should still give us a little bit of an idea of how these specific photos pretty much hold up. Now, before getting too deep into the photos themselves, I do kind of want to break down exactly what these, kind of photos or these cameras kind of have the capability of having. So with the iPhone 14, this was a phone that pretty much has a dual camera setup, which is really cool. Dual camera setup, wide and ultra wide camera. It is the only camera here that has an ultra wide camera. So I didn't want to go ahead and pretty much just focus on the capability behind these lenses, but I would always say that having some sort of ultra wide lens is always kind of nicer than having a telephoto lens, but it is what it is. There's not much we can do about it. With the iPhone 10s, that device does have a dual camera setup as well, but instead of that telephoto lens, it is but instead of that ultra wide camera, it is a telephoto lens. So again, having that telephoto lens there is really cool. With the iPhone 10, it is the exact same thing, and the iPhone 10R is the only camera here with a single wide angle lens. Now, all these cameras pretty much have 12 megapixel lenses, which are, it's kind of nice. You have things like, standard photo mode, standard video mode. With the iPhone 14, you do have cinematic mode, which is really cool. You have the ability of filming 4K 60 videos at the front and the back. So with both the front and the back camera, you have that capability. You have the stabilization mode too, which is nice. With the iPhone 10s, you have the ability of filming 4K at 60 on the back. Same thing with the iPhone 10R. You do get 1080p at 60 on the front though, which is a really nice touch. You do have things like portrait mode and standard photo and video mode, but you do not have things like cinematic mode on those cameras. The iPhone 10 is probably the least heaviest camera here, to be honest. That thing has a dual camera setup, but only 4K at 30 on the back, and you do have 1080p camera on the front, but only 1080p at 30. So definitely keep those things in mind as well. Now that we have kind of the preliminary stuff out of the way, these first couple photos, or all these photos, were taken indoors at various lighting conditions, most of them natural light, but also a lot of artificial light as well. And within this first photo, the iPhone 14 photos will be on the top left, iPhone 10s photos on the top right, iPhone 10R photos on the bottom left, and the iPhone 10 photos on the bottom right. So again, with this first photo of this plant, you can kind of see that there's really not anything crazy going on here. The coloring does look actually substantially different. All these photos were taken pretty much the exact same time. Now, the thing with the iPhone 14 is at first it kind of looked like it kind of overblew the photo or the lighting condition a little bit, but it kind of looks better on the iPhone 14. It looks like on these iPhones, it kind of dulled it out a little bit more. If we go and kind of take a look at something like the tip of this specific leaf, I think this is where things probably start looking a little bit better for the iPhone 14. You can kind of see that at least with these specific ones, in my opinion, it doesn't look bad. I think the iPhone 10s looks pretty decent as well, but the iPhone 14 did kind of brighten the image up, which some people actually prefer. In my opinion, it does look pretty good. It also looks like it kind of blurred out the background a little bit more than the 10R and the iPhone 10s. But with the iPhone 10, it doesn't really look that bad either, if I have to be honest. So with this specific photo, with these photos, definitely doesn't look bad. And I'll definitely say with the iPhone 14, it probably looks the best here. Now with this next photo, again, completely, I don't even know why I took this photo, it was very, very random, but it was just artificial light. I wanted to see how these, colors would kind of look like on all of them. And again, I don't really notice big differences here. They all kind of look pretty good. I think the iPhone 10, as you can see, this is the biggest takeaway. It completely overblew these lights right here, and it kind of overdid the lights a little bit too over here, which kind of doesn't look that good. With the iPhone 10R, it did actually make it look a little bit more accurate, I would say, more in line with the 14 and the 10s as well. I will say though, with the iPhone 14, it does look a little bit better. Maybe it doesn't even look that much better than the 10s and the 10 and the 10R. So I wouldn't really give it that. I think the screen on the iPhone 6s here looks a little bit better. But regardless, I would say the iPhone 10 is probably the biggest takeaway here of kind of overblowing that image. Now this next image was pretty much kind of more or less the same thing, just at the same desk, same lighting condition. I just took it of this specific iPhone box. And in this photo, again, I don't really notice big differences here either. I think they all look fairly much the same. Again, I was hoping there would be bigger differences, but there really aren't. If we go and kind of take a look at like the text on the side of this box here, that might be something where we can kind of take a look at and kind of compare. The 10R, I barely took it. On the iPhone 14, I barely took it. And the iPhone 10s, I barely took it here. But if you kind of look, I mean, there does seem to be noticeable grain on the iPhone 10R. The iPhone 10 looks pretty decent, but if you kind of look at the box itself, and maybe even the background of these lights, it looks like the iPhone 10 are a little bit more grainy a little bit, but not a big deal. The iPhone 14, the top here looks a little bit more wider and brighter, which looks nice. And the iPhone 10 also actually looks kind of bright there too. So maybe the iPhone 10 has a thing where it just over brightens some of these images sometimes. It's not a big deal, but it's just one of those things that kind of stands out to me. Now this next one was of this plant thing as well. And again, from first glance, none of them look crazy. The 10s actually looks a little bit brighter, which immediately kind of makes it look to me like it's a little bit of a better image sometimes. But if you go and start zooming in a little bit, this is where things can probably start looking a little bit different as well. So as you can see, I mean, from my opinion, I think all these photos look pretty decent. The iPhone 14 looks kind of not the most dull one, but it looks like the most sharpened one. It doesn't look like the brightest one out of all of these. I'd probably give that to the 10s. But also, one cool thing is if you actually look at the background of all these ones, this is where the iPhone 14 kind of shines at. You can kind of see that it did actually blur out the background a little bit more on the iPhone 14. This will give it a really good effect that if you're going through and taking pictures of people and whatnot, the background will not be in focus. With the iPhone 10R, with the iPhone 10s, and the iPhone 10, all those background parts are way more in focus than the iPhone 14 does. So in my opinion, the iPhone 14 here, especially in that bokeh segment, looks really, really good from pretty much everything I've tested. Now this specific photo, again, nothing crazy, just of this little whatever camera thing. One thing though that I've should kind of talked about before, the 10 likes to overblow the background and over brighten these images, so it doesn't really do a good job. I mean, you can't even tell the background in this specific photo. With the iPhone 14, the 10R, and the iPhone 10s, you can tell that the background is there, which is nice. It's in a little wood area. But with the iPhone 10R, you can see that this photo is actually noticeably like yellow. If you look at the top, it just looks way more yellowish. With the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 10s, it did actually keep that specific, whiteness kind of there, which again makes the photo look a little bit better. So this one I'll definitely say again, that's another demonstration of how well the iPhone 14 kind of does here. And I think this final photo is just of my iPhone SE I had laying around. And again, not anything crazy, just of these colors. And from first glance, I probably wouldn't be able to tell massive differences. They all look kind of the same. I think the iPhone 10R here looks a little bit more yellow, and so does the iPhone 10s. The iPhone 10 again likes to over brighten some of these images, which isn't like the worst thing in the world. There's definitely worse things than that. But I think the iPhone 14 again here looks the best. It keeps that photo extremely bright, pale. It makes it look, the background is fairly blurred for the most part. If we kind of take a look at like this specific portion of all these images here with that charging block in the background, again, you can kind of see from my opinion that the iPhone 14 again does the best job at blurring out the background. The 10R is pretty much still in focus. The iPhone 10 still kind of in focus too, but a little bit more blurred out than the 10R. And the iPhone 10s isn't that bad, but the 14 does the best job here. So ultimately what I can tell you was from this kind of basic camera comparison is that I definitely do think that the 10s and the 10R hold up fairly well, and so does the iPhone 10. But the iPhone 14 is a noticeable difference here. But I don't think it was like a crazy big difference, at least from the image quality. I will tell you things like the microphone quality, video quality would be pretty much improved here as well. Things like that will definitely be better. But I do think, at the end of the day, the 14 is the better, camera here probably when it comes down to it. But I do think the iPhone, 10R and the 10s still have decent cameras. The 10s is actually still pretty decent for its age, but I would definitely say the 14 is probably the better way to go if you want to, kind of compare them. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.